Now, before we get into the details of HDFC and HDFC Bank, let's first understand what the hell a merger is and why do people do a merger. So let's imagine this is company A and this is company B. One is smaller, one is larger, and there are other players also playing in the market. So why would two companies merge to become one giant company? So imagine these guys merge and become one really large company. What advantage does this really give? So one is obviously they can actually have a larger market share because now this company has two companies which have turned it into one. So one is market share. Another thing could be reducing the cost of operation. So as you can see, we had one sales team who was selling, say, product A, and we had another sales team in the other company selling another product A. You can take that down, reducing your operational costs. Sometimes you have redundancy when you have an overlap and these two companies coming together. So unfortunately, the most common thing is either a lot of firings during this time, or people get reassigned to different job roles because now there's redundancy in the system. But from an efficiency company point of view, your costs do come down. Then you have expansion to new territories. Maybe company A was present in a place company B was not, and now they have access to that, very close to the market share wala point. And finally, there could be common products they could unite, and then they could grow revenue and increase profits. But let's understand how this makes sense for HDFC and HDFC Bank. We can see clues of this in what the HDFC Bank's CEO said. Quite simply, this is an opportunity we cannot afford to miss. Home loans are an emotional product and bring them a host of accelerated benefits for the bank. I think one of them is that it's actually a secured loan versus an unsecured loan. Another interesting thing that he pointed out was that only 2% of HDFC Bank's customers source their home loans through the bank. So if they merged, the cross-selling opportunity could be immense. On the other hand, for HDFC, only 30% of the customers bank with HDFC Bank. The rest have banks elsewhere. That's another opportunity to cross-sell. So the growth here could actually be immense if these two people merge. And that's why these two businesses are merging. In fact, the CEO said a bunch of other things, but let's just simplify it a bit. I'll get this out of the way. Well, let's see. So the first thing is, well, here are the benefits of the merger. One, you can actually build a housing loan portfolio under the bank. There is a reduction in unsecured loans. I think 50% of all the loans that HDFC Bank does are unsecured, which is not good. If it's asset-backed, it is less risk for the bank. So if you have this is actually very nice because a secured loan is always better than an unsecured loan. This one will be backed by a house. Then there is obviously huge cross-selling opportunity. As we just discussed, HDFC Bank customers can become HDFC customers and vice versa. Finally, the entity will create a large enough balance sheet. And finally, HDFC can get access to low-cost funds because now it's part of HDFC Bank. This obviously is a huge benefit for the company itself, especially in its bottom line. Finally, when we look, both of them merged. SBI is still the largest bank out there and ICICI Bank is still number 2. Private mein, still HDFC will be the largest. But no significant change over here. But the asset size, right? The balance sheet size becomes much, much larger. But these two entities were not separate from the start. Actually, let's rewind all the way back of Mr. Parekh starting HDFC. He approached the National Housing Board and said, "Yaar, मेरे को ना कुछ banking में करना है." And they said, "We will allow you to do this, but the strict condition is, since you've approached the NHB, you only have to focus on dispersing loans for housing. We want to increase house ownership in the country and you have to enable that." Now, this may sound like a huge problem. As a bank, you're not allowed in this case to sell credit cards, to do loans for entrepreneurs or industrialists. You just have to focus on houses. But this turned out to be really, really good. And 4 things came out. 1, focus was the key. They just focused on one product. And I'm sure even today, when you say HDFC, people think, housing, ghar का लोन लेना है, HDFC से बात करो. That really helped for the customer and for the management. Second, one product but was the best. Everyone in the company was just focused on a singular product and they weren't confused with other lines. In fact, when you look at a lot of businesses, they have 10 lines of business and only one does really well. Paytm is a really good example, not talking about revenues, but say usage. They have so many different businesses, but one or two of them is the cash cow or does extremely well, while the others are average performers. In this case, they focused on one product and well, it did pretty well. The other thing is the best conditions became because there were strict conditions from NHB from the start. They had to follow certain rules. And finally, this was completely professionally run and you didn't have any lala sitting on top. And the goal was very clear. But Mr. Puri, who had left Citibank, it was not easy for him to just join, right? He wouldn't just show up. He had three conditions. First, he said, "Dekho, mujhe complete freedom chahiye and I want a different entity." Back then, it was just HDFC. So they said, okay, we will now create HDFC Bank separate and HDFC just for housing. So these were two separate entities. That's when that happened, when Mr. Puri entered. And finally, he said, I want space to experiment. You've given me the conditions. You've given me the end result. I understand banking. Leave me alone. And the result is HDFC Bank today. So what do you do with all this information? Well, there is an opportunity here called the arbitrage, and I'd love to explain it. But before I do that, I wanted to tell you a little story about LearnApp. You know, when we started about 4 years ago, we wanted to teach everyone how trading, investing, personal finance works in the best possible way. So we got the best leaders, the best production you can imagine. Our users loved it, but there was a problem. The problem was an individual course, 75% of people would watch, but when they had to complete technical analysis or fundamental analysis, which were multiple courses, only single digits would actually complete it. And we thought, why is this happening if everything is so good and the users aren't complaining? And we realized learning is like the gym. You have to push yourself to wear the socks and the juta, go to the gym and work out. Not only that, you need to have proper nutrition. So it's a lifestyle change, which is why a lot of people fail at the gym, because you need consistency and high effort. So we thought if we're more like a gym, then we need a coach. A coach who will hold you by the collar, pick you out of your home and make sure you work out. So our version of this is very simple and it's absolutely free, obviously. It's called the 2-day experience. Here, you fill up a form, apply, learn how trading and investing works over 2 days with a coach. We call him the mentor. He teaches you everything from the basics of what is trading all the way to something intermediate. And after that, you don't even need LearnApp, unless of course you want to go deeper. All of this is done live over a weekend. But here's the problem. We realize if you're not motivated, you won't get in. So 70% of people who apply do not get access. If you did attend these 2-day experiences, please put in the comments what you think. We think this is our contribution towards India so people can learn in a nice environment which doesn't cost them an arm and a leg. And this is obviously free. Anyway, let's get back to the arbitrage opportunity. So we have two entities over here. We have HDFC and we have HDFC Bank. In a merger, when you own shares in company A and these two entities merge, you get X number of shares in company 2. So over here, it's 42 shares of HDFC Bank will equal to 25 shares of HDFC. Now within this ratio, we already know the price and we know the swap, which means if you buy enough shares, this should equal to 0, right? When the merger happens. But right now, if you actually do the math, and the math is right here on your screen, I won't explain it, but it's pretty simple. The difference comes out to be 2,024. Now, of course, the market prices are always changing, which means if you were to buy these shares right now and the merger would happen, you would make about 2,000 rupees on roughly 68,000 rupees ka investment. So the question is, if everyone knows this free money is lying there, why does this exist? This is actually representation of the risk of the merger not going through. So whenever there's a takeover or a merger, there is some portion over that is always laid, which is open, and that is called the arbitrage opportunity. Now, should you actually do this to make money? I have no idea. But at least now you know what a merger is, what arbitrage is, and how you can actually make money with things like this. The problem with strategies like this, which try to make money from this, is if the merger doesn't go through, your loss actually becomes pretty large, which is why hedge funds do this with multiple mergers across the world and then try to leverage off of this. This is not risk-free money. But it's interesting, right? Now, did you find this swap, the merger, and the business interesting? I think that is a more compelling story. What do you think this merged entity can create over the next 10 years? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, you want to be a long-term player in India because India is a growing market. You don't want to think about chiller party like this. Tell me what you think about this video that we did today. See you in the next one.
अरे सर वो लाइक और सब्सक्राइब बोलना है.
हाँ सही बोल रहे हैं. लाइक करो, शेयर करो, सब्सक्राइब करो. हो गया डन. कर दो प्लीज, कमेंट भी कर दो. कूल, थैंक यू. ओके, कट.